All right, Doc, I've heard so many people, doctors, say people don't know. It's a myth when you think you're dead when you give your organs. Is that right? Is that a myth?
Well, this is very distressing. There are two generally accepted ways in which we determine death. One is death by cardiopulmonary causes, and that is quite simple. If your heart is no longer beating on its own and respiration is no longer happening spontaneously, then a person can be determined to be dead. The other way is death by neurologic criteria, and that is not quite as clear-cut. Unfortunately, people should go through an extensive neurologic exam to prove that the entire brain, including the brain stem, now has permanent loss of function. And the brain stem is important because that is the part of the brain that drives respiratory drive. So you need to conduct a thorough neurologic exam, including proof that the brain stem is no longer functioning. Tragically, it appears that these guidelines have been breached in many, many cases, and this study is really quite horrifying. I posted on X the other day exactly what you just intimated, which is that this is going to have a horrible fallout and that many people, understandably so, will remove their names from the organ donation list out of fear that someone will prematurely come for their kidneys. I have been a huge supporter of organ donation, Grant. I'm a trauma specialist, but we cannot ever allow someone's life to be ended prematurely in order to harvest those organs.
The reality is you're probably just like me. I want to give my organs if I die, but I don't want if there's a chance of me living, and we've heard stories of full recovery. Let me play a clip. This is Dr. Paul Byrne. Let me play this clip for you and then get your response, because after COVID, I now don't trust anybody. I don't trust the medical community. I think everything's about money. I worry now we're finding this out about the organ donor industry. Let me play the clip of Dr. Paul Byrne.
Brain death is a lie, and so people don't even realize it's a lie anymore. But it's been a lie from the beginning, continues to be a lie. They invented brain death mainly to get organs, but then also so they don't waste money on treating people who aren't ever going to get a job, who are just going to live and not die.
Is that true?
Unfortunately, I think that there is some truth to that. Clearly, there are people who meet the criteria of brain death. They cannot breathe on their own. They have no cognitive function. They have no evidence of feeling pain. We go through some of the things, for example, touching their eyeball with something. Normally, you would get a blink reflex. That's called the corneal reflex. That is absent. They don't show any indication of pain. In other words, their heart rate and blood pressure does not increase when there is painful stimuli, and on and on. So there are people, Grant, who clearly have complete, irreversible, permanent brain loss, and therefore are never going to, and we can determine those people as, quote, brain dead. But it's a slippery slope, because unless you go through the full course of studies, of evaluations, and particularly in cases where there's been an overdose or substance abuse, substance issues, you need to give adequate time to make sure that all of that has been metabolized and worn off. You need to make sure that the patient's body is warm. There are people who've been submerged in water, for example, for tremendously long periods of time, in excess of 30 minutes, who were declared dead, and then when they warm up, when the body warms up, they all of a sudden develop signs of life again. Wow. And you start cutting corners in order to get an organ because you have a needy patient and you're desperate to get that kidney or that cornea or that heart, you can make a very, very bad decision, and this has got to be highly regulated.
Let me play one more clip for you, because I think this also highlights, I'm not an attorney, but this highlights the need for a living will. You could spell out all of these scenarios if you wanted. You can get very detailed in your living will, have a panel that you decide who's going to make these decisions for you, rather than just leaving up to the doctor and you sign, as the lady said, on your driver's license, hey, go ahead, take them. This is at the congressional hearing. Dr. Lynch, I believe, is a federal regulator who works for the federal agency under HHS that oversees the organ donation industry. He gets pressed here. Watch this.
publicized an open letter characterizing the ongoing effort to improve patient safety through enhanced oversight as a misinformation conspiracy campaign and concluded it is time for it to stop. And it was signed by more than 20 of the UNO's staff. Would that letter constitute an attempt to obstruct HRSA's investigation?
The legal definition of obstruct, I don't believe I would be the.
I'm not talking about a legal definition.
I think what he's getting at is regulators, the industry, doesn't want the feds investigating all of this. And just like everything else we talk about, Dr. Victory, they try to cover it up. 30 seconds if you can.
Well, unfortunately, again, much like what we witnessed with COVID, Grant, people are willing to turn a blind eye to the truth and not, cut corners, all in the name of money. There is tragically a lot of money to be made in the organ procurement world. And I hate to say it, but I'm sure that some of this is driven by money, or someone believes that a recipient of an organ is more worthy than the person who is about to pass away, or that they could save or help, 5 or 10 different people with those organs at the expense of just, quote, one life. I am a strong supporter of organ donation, but it has got to be done respectfully with the sanctity of life at the top of our priority list. We can never allow this to happen. And I agree with Robert Kennedy Jr. There has got to be tremendous oversight and investigation into this to make sure that this sort of thing never happens.